Well, hello, good morning, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this important conversation right now on the Relief for Main Street Act. As we all know, this moment in our nation's history is such a critical moment for one constituency in particular, which is small business owners, who we all know creates 2 out of every 3 jobs in our country and pulled us out of last recession, and I firmly believe will do so out of this public health crisis. I wanted to welcome everyone today. My name is Rep Buttle. I'm a senior advisor for small business for America's Future, and we're thrilled to have an amazing host of panelists with us today to talk about the Relief Act. And this event came together at rapid speed, so it's amazing to have hundreds of small business owners and leaders joining us from across the country today. And of course, we're thrilled to be joined by U.S. Senator Cory Booker. Before I turn the line over to the senator, I just wanted to take a moment and thank so many of the partners, which you're going to see up on the screen, who helped to make today possible. So the U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce, who's going to be on the line with us today, the National Asian and Pacific Chamber of Commerce, the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Page 30 Coalition, Small Business Roundtable, National Association for the Self-Employed, the Main Street Alliance, the El Paso Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, who we'll hear from today, Connected Commerce Council, and of course, the Economic Innovation Group. So huge thanks to everyone for activating your networks and making today such a success. And with that, it is my pleasure to turn the conversation over to Senator Cory Booker. Senator, please take it away.
Rhett, you're awesome. And just really, I'm grateful for you and really all the sponsoring organizations that have helped put this call together, a call that I think is really just a critical conversation, not just for individual businesses, but really for, as Rhett was saying, for our whole economy. So much of it rides on the strength of our small businesses. And this is a challenging time. So many people are struggling, and we're seeing not just the grief of death, as people lose their lives, but we see the grief of people losing their livelihoods as well. Family businesses on the brink, ones that have been in people's families for generations. And I want to make sure you all leave this all with a state of play on the Hill, and so that you know what's going on and what my priorities are, and that I hear a little bit from you about how we hope we can move forward to do what I think is an ambition of everybody. And I was just on the phone having a good talk with a friend of mine on the other side of the aisle. This idea of helping American small businesses thrive as a part of our larger competitiveness as a country is an American value. And so, look, the talks are remaining, and it's tough right now. We're trying to hammer out a host of critical issues and see if we can bridge differences. And this includes local and state funding, the continuation of unemployment benefits and eviction protections, another round of direct payments. We have a real problem in America right now with about 40% of families with kids being food insecure, and how we can address that, and so much more. I'm really hopeful that a deal can be reached. Every day that goes by is a day that more American families fall into the breach and find themselves in economic crisis. And so I'm hoping that a deal can be reached. And while it's unlikely, I still think something might happen by this weekend. We are all obviously focused on the small business title. The stakes are extraordinarily high. And many of you are holding on, as you know, by that proverbial thread and need government support. So first, it's likely that there will be another round of PPP. Remember, PPP was originally conceived with this very short-term horizon, or a belief that this economy would somehow rebound. Well, we clearly know that's not happening. And so there is this understanding that we need to do more. Now, the HEALS Act included about $190 billion. And for those of you who don't know, this was the first sort of Republican congressional, or should I say Senate Republican bill. And they put about $190 billion in funding for more targeted PPP focused on small businesses with 300 or fewer employees, and at least a 50% reduction in revenue due to COVID. My understanding is that that threshold has since been lowered to 35% reduction. Second, it appears that there will be a new product focused on longer-term working capital. Negotiations are still going on to determine the loan terms, eligibility, and whether there'll be any forgivable component. And again, while I'm supportive of these above measures, I don't think it's enough. And I'm fighting hard for inclusion of something that I've done on a bipartisan manner called the Relief Act, or Relief for Main Street Act. It is the only bipartisan bill that sends funds to states and other communities to deliver grants and emergency assistance to very small businesses. And so this is how the bill would work. It would allocate $50 billion to states, cities, and counties to seed and scale small business relief funds. These local funds, often in partnership with local chambers of commerce, foundations, CDFIs, they would in turn provide grants and low interest loans to small businesses with less than 20 employees, or businesses based in low income communities with up to 50 employees. Unlike the sort of one size fits all approach from the SBA, I really believe that community leaders are better able to design and deliver assistance to business owners, recognizing that every business's needs are distinct, and therefore the funding should be flexible without restrictions on how the grant or loan is used. We know this will work because it's actually already happening all over the country, with hundreds of small business funds that have been all popped up in every state across the nation. But these funds are really under-resourced. I know this from New Jersey. We have a grant program that opened back in April that saw 5 times oversubscribed within 75 minutes. In other words, within 75 minutes, 5x the amount of resources we had was being asked for by small businesses. And so the Relief for Main Street Act will provide the necessary resources to ensure every small business, including those that have been left out of PPP and the EIDL loans, are able to survive this crisis. It is a level of urgency, I feel, that we do something like this, or we will see just over time a catastrophic end to so many of the small businesses that are the lifebloods of neighborhoods and communities across this country, including the one I live in personally. So with that, I'd love to answer any questions, and just grateful for this opportunity to have this discussion.
Well, thank you so much, Senator. Our first question is going to be from Cindy Ramos Davidson, who runs a Chamber of Commerce in Texas. So Cindy, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Can you all hear me?
I hear you loud and clear, Cindy, and obviously a lot of folks are thinking about El Paso these days, and so just sending strength and energy to your community.
Thank you. We appreciate that, and we appreciate your leadership. By the way, Renard Johnson, who's a cousin of Jerry Johnson out of Philly, they send their regards. Renard used to be the chairman of our board a few years ago.
I didn't realize that. Wow, that's a great connection.
Yes. First of all, thank you so much for your leadership and your service. We appreciate it very much. We know firsthand that you understand the sweat equity that's going on down on the main street. My question is, how is the Relief Act different from the CARES Act in terms of providing easy access to relief for our Main Street mom and pop business owners? Many of them have complained to us that the previous relief efforts are just so burdensome and time consuming. Can you tell me what makes this legislation different?
Well, first of all, I agree with that one size fits all PPP problems. A lot of P's there. But you know, PPP was still just critical. It got hundreds of billions at this point of dollars into small businesses, but it operates through the banking system, and that's a problem. Therefore, it's less likely to serve the smallest businesses that you and I know often don't have the kind of resources to go through those processes. It's just so burdensome and time consuming. And so many of those businesses are the minority owned ones that just are more likely to be unbanked, not to have those relationships or the sort of hours. As we know, a lot of our small business owners are working around the clock to go through all of that bureaucracy. And so it really was challenging. And so what distinguishes the Relief Act for Main Street, or the Relief for Main Street Act from PPP, is that it works outside of banks and the banking system. And there are advantages to that. So number one, I would say local funds can design financing products that meet the particular needs of their small businesses and their communities. It's not one size fits all again. In many cases, they will be just outright grants, which are far less burdensome than forgivable loans. Because remember, if you get a grant, as opposed to a forgivable loan, that you have to fill out a lot of paperwork to show that you qualify for that forgivable loan. And there's, they need just documentation and the like, while grants and the ones we're talking about have less paperwork, less documentation necessary. Second, our program, our act allows for collaboration and partnership. In many of the funds that are up and running across the country, we're actually seeing partnership between community partners who can provide the technical assistance and outreach to even the smallest of businesses. A Wells Fargo or Bank of America or even the SBA simply isn't able to reach out to the local food truck or Main Street business to walk them through the application process. And look, finally, we know that small businesses need flexible capital. Relief for Main Street Act is not limited to payroll expenses and allows for longer term capital infusion. So I get exactly what you're saying in your question, and this was designed to deal with the often exhaustive documentation, paperwork, and bureaucracy that a lot of these other loans really involve. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Our next question will be from Frank Knapp. Frank does it all, Senator. He has a small business. He runs a chamber. He's part of many national organizations. So over to you, Mr. Knapp.
Thanks, Red. Appreciate that. Yes, I am co-chair of the Small Business for America's Future, also president and CEO of the South Carolina Small Business Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Senator, for your efforts here today.
Hey, Frank.
Yes, sir.
Can I just interrupt you, man? I have been alone in my house. You could probably help me get a comfort animal, like a dog, can't you?
Yes, we can help you with that.
I appreciate it. We can talk offline because I know you're the man I've needed the whole pandemic.
Well, thank you for that, but thank you for doing the call today and for sponsoring the Relief Act. That does address recommendations we have made about grants to real small businesses. So my question is, Senator, what is the feasibility that the Relief Act will pass? What can we do to help, and what are the other small business provisions?
Hey, Frank, the end there, you faded out, but I think I got a handle of the question. Can everybody hear me?
We can hear you, Senator. I think we Frank's line muted out, but you're all good.
Yeah, I'm good to go. So Frank, first of all, I just want you to say I feel this kinship with businesses because I had to run a city, and the wonderful thing about businesses is it kind of sears away a lot of your partisanship. You kind of get it done kind of people, and that's how I felt when I was mayor. And when I went down to Washington, I had that same attitude. Like, let me find partners on the other side of the aisle and just get this done. So this is actually a very bipartisan bill. We have senators on from both parties, and that's what gives me hope about getting this done because it's pragmatic, it's bipartisan, and we've had a lot of conversations with leadership, including Senator Schumer and Senator Cardin. They're the lead Democrats on the Small Business Committee, and Senator Daines, who's one of my key partners in this on the Republican side, who's been pushing it with Republican leadership. But this is absolutely the crunch time in these negotiations, and we need your help in reaching out to your elected representatives and to do it today if possible, and letting them know that the Relief for Main Street Act is an essential component of any package. So for example, your two South Carolina senators actually are people I have a friendship with, but you're reaching out to them as a South Carolina business could really be helpful in letting them know that the Relief for Main Street Act, a bipartisan act, it's essential to see if we can get this into the package. So the best thing that you could do for me right now is reaching out to your senator's office. If you have a relationship there already, reaching out directly to them, because this is really critical for our success, because these negotiations are ongoing, and getting more senators to be engaged right now in a package that's less burdensome, in grants that have less conditions on them, that are more flexible. All of these things are really critical, and your voices are powerful, frankly, to both Democrat and Republican senators, because you all are job creators, economic generators of economic activity, and therefore have the ear of many of us. So that's the best way to help.
Awesome. Well, Senator, I want to thank you. We're going to hear from Ron Busby, who's the CEO of the Black Chamber next, but I wanted to give our thanks. I know you're running in between votes, but if there's anything you want to add before you drop off, huge thanks from all of us on the line today.
No, I'm grateful for everybody that is on the line and all the work that you do, and just grateful to be in partnership with you in this time of crisis. Wishing you all the best.
Thank you, Senator. Thanks so much for your time. And we're going to stay on, and we're going to hear from several experts about the Relief from Main Street Act, including Chad Meisel, who is one of the Senator's key advisors on all economic issues. We'll take some question and answer with Bruce Katz, who many of you on the line know. Before we do that, we're going to turn the line over to Ron Busby, who's the President and CEO of U.S. Black Chambers, Inc. Ron's going to give us a little perspective about why the Relief Act is important, and some on-the-ground intelligence about what's happening with Black small businesses across America. So Ron, over to you.
Thank you, Red. Thank you to all of the participants on the call. Obviously, thank you so much, Senator Booker, for your remarks, as well as your sponsorship and leadership on this particular opportunity for small businesses. The month of August is Black Business Month, so we are truly honored to have this opportunity to discuss concerns as well as opportunities for Black-owned businesses. And I think that this particular initiative is right on line. There was a recent article that was came out in the New York Federal Reserve Bank that stated only 1 in 10 Black business owners actually have a banking relationship with a line of credit. So to hear Senator Booker talk about the opportunity to get funds directly from CDFIs and other financial institutions is welcome news. We know that it has been a challenge for Black business owners and minority business owners across the country to participate in the payroll protection plan as well as the EIDL loan. So this is a welcome piece of legislation. And the last thing I'd say is that there's a lot of conversation that we're having around minority business status. And for U.S. Black Chamber, we are really looking to create a Black business status in that our different organizations and communities have different needs and challenges. And so you'll see us come out and speak a lot about specifically issues pertaining to Black business owners. But for all of those that are listening, you can find out more about what we're doing across the country this month as well as the rest of the year at usblackchambers.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. And thank you for your leadership in what is such a critical time for Black business in America. We wanted to provide some perspective from on the ground. We always love our national leaders, but we also, it's what this piece of legislation is all about hearing about what's going on in communities. So I'm really thrilled to turn the conversation over to Della Clark, who's the president of the Enterprise Center, to hear a little bit from her about why this is an important initiative. Della.
Thank you for this opportunity, and please give my regard to the senator as well. I am excited about the Relief Act because it fits the purpose of where our clients are right now, particularly in this crisis moment. And the reason I'm excited because here in Pennsylvania, we just experienced what everyone has talked about. We set out with $200 million in state funds from the previous CARES Act. And just like the senator mentioned in New Jersey, we went through 40,000 requests for 800 million within a matter of days, and we only had 200 million. And with this Relief Act, it could have topped off these funds so that we could have provided more capital to more businesses. And I also agree that when you work at the ground level like the Enterprise Center, you see firsthand how the cities and counties are more in line and touch than the federal government. And I agree with everyone on the SBA PPP. You might find this interesting, but we actually processed an SBA PPP for $900. And the reason we did that was because we wanted to be able to demonstrate that we could help everyone. And so with this Relief Act, we wouldn't have to go through all that paperwork and that rigorous process of the PPP and under the Relief Act. It would save organizations like ours time and resources in trying to help our clients access this money. So I'm really excited about this because I agree that the cities and states are the best vehicle along with intermediaries like CDFIs and the Enterprise Center And I think all of us working together can help our small businesses lead us out of this recession. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Stella. We're now going to get to everyone's favorite part of the conversation, which is question and answer. If you look over into the right-hand side, we already have hundreds of questions, which is awesome. So what I'm going to try to do is kind of like batch things together into themes, and kick them over to our experts here. We're so thrilled to have Chad, who, as I mentioned at the top, is the Senator's economic policy advisor and just an amazing friend and advocate to the small business community. And then a man who needs no introduction, Bruce Katz, who has a long history of both public and private leadership on economic development initiatives. So, gents, thanks so much for being here. Bruce, just before we hop into questions, anything that you want to add, Bruce or Chad, about overall framing about why the Relief for Main Street Act is so important for small business? Bruce, let's start with you.
Yeah, just to build on what the senator said and what Della just said, this is about an all-in approach to small business relief, because when we started examining the local and state relief funds that were beginning to emerge back in March, they were put together, capitalized by governments, quasi-public entities, philanthropies, a broad array of financial institutions, business chambers. And when you have those kind of distribution channels, ultimately you're going to reach that part of the small business community, particularly those enterprises with less than 20 employees or those that are located in low-income communities, that efforts that only relied on conventional financial institutions don't reach. So this is really about a broad perspective of who in the United States, whether public, private, civic, traditional, financial, who's best enabled, essentially capable of reaching this broad set of small businesses that have been affected by this crisis.
Thanks. Chad, any high-level thoughts from you before we hop into some Q&A?
No, I think it's been well covered. Thrilled to be here and eager to get to questions.
Awesome. So the first question we're getting a lot of is, a lot of people are confused. There's a lot of legislation moving around small business, CARES Act, which passed. There's several stuff. Chad, can you help us understand why the Relief for Main Street Act is unique and different and a key part of what Congress should pass?
Yeah, sure. And I think Senator Booker touched on this a bit as well. I mean, I think what as this package has started to materialize, as negotiators continue to kind of hammer something out, we're seeing kind of the broad contours be, one, some kind of targeted PPP, second round of PPP, two, some kind of new product involving long-term working capital, and we think that's all necessary, but not sufficient. And so the kind of the puzzle piece that this fills, that the Relief for Main Street fills, is a really decentralized approach that works through local communities and intermediaries like Della's and others to provide really flexible financing, often grants, to the smallest of businesses. This is again, I think it could be a key financing option for businesses that haven't accessed EIDL or PPP, or in some cases, I think it will be a complement to those, because you can imagine spending, having PPP for short run payroll expenses, and then say a grant from your local small business relief fund that would cover either longer term liquidity needs or non-payroll needs in the short run.
Super helpful. Bruce, next question. Someone here sort of expressing some concern or interest in your insight between sort of federal and local government sort of cooperation, and sort of how funds would move from the federal government to local government, and how, are there successful models of sort of what that looks like, and is this the right route by resourcing sort of local partners on the ground?
I think it's the right route because we have a long history of the federal government allocating assistance directly, not just to city governments, but to county governments and state governments. And then those local and state governments then using the best intermediaries and distribution channels that they have access to. So in some places, it might be the government itself that provides the flexible resources that Chad was describing. In other places, what they would do is tap CDFIs or tap business chambers or leverage up the funding that is provided from the national government with other sources from philanthropies or even conventional financial institutions. So there's a greater understanding of the breadth and depth of institutions and intermediaries at the local and state level that touch small business and already have strong relationships, particularly with the very small businesses and particularly with those in disadvantaged communities. So even though the funding would go directly to governments, it could distribute out to a broad network of public, private, and civic entities.
And let me stay with you real quickly, Bruce, and then Chad, I want to come to you for a process question. There's a question about how do we make sure that these funds are getting to business owners of color and in making sure that it in particular is reaching Black and Latino businesses?
Well, to some extent, the bill, through its definition, enables that to happen because it's focusing on either small businesses with less than 20 employees or businesses located in low-income communities. But we also have a proof of concept right now. We've had hundreds and hundreds of funds that have been operating since March. As Della said, in many cases, oversubscribed and undercapitalized. And these funds, because they were initially focused on this target constituency, have shown again and again and again that they disproportionately serve Black and Brown-owned business. So this is not just a new experiment. To some extent, to a large extent, it's building off of what has worked since the crisis has began and helping these local and state relief funds top up so they can actually match this incredible demand that they've experienced.
Helpful. Yeah, we have a process question about sort of a few questions around like, what is the reality of this, getting in the package? And if for some reason it doesn't happen by the end of this weekend, like the senator was mentioning, does that present more opportunity for the Relief for Main Street Act? Or how should people be thinking around the sort of, strategy of getting this in? And if it doesn't happen in this next sort of stimulus package, that's my lingo, not yours. What are other opportunities to sort of be an advocate for Relief for Main Street?
Sure, appreciate that question. Yeah, and I think that this is definitely the moment to push. I think who knows what none of us know kind of what the next several months will look like, both from kind of a public health and economic perspective, and certainly not from a legislative perspective. And so, listen, I mean, I think we are quite hopeful that there is a path forward for the Relief for Main Street Act. We've been engaging throughout with leadership and the Treasury Secretary and his staff is aware of the bill and certainly open to it. I think there's without getting into too much of kind of the wonky legislative process piece, but I kind of see two potential paths for it. I mean, the first is through kind of the small business kind of title, and the various provisions dealing with small businesses. And the second is through state and local funding and the possibility that if and when the federal government provides states and localities with fiscal relief for a whole host of priorities, whether they could incorporate our provisions and require that X percent of that is dedicated to small businesses along the lines that we've laid out in our Relief for Main Street Act. So those are kind of the dual tracks. I only mention that because it kind of entails different folks in terms of leadership on the Hill and who to target. But again, in terms of advocacy and we really see this as the this is now at the time, and this is kind of the only game in town. And so this is how this is the vehicle we're really making our big push around.
That's awesome. So I'm going to ask each of you one more question and then ask for wrap-up thoughts. Bruce, there's a question around timing and just given your experience at HUD. Let's say this happens, the president signs the bill. What is the realistic timing when communities are going to feel the impact?
Well, a portion of this would be allocated by the traditional CDBG formula, which is quite well known, cities, counties, states, federal government. So generally speaking, what would happen is there would need to be some guidance provided by Treasury in this case, and then the formula funds could go pretty swiftly. I personally think that this needs to get out within a month, because there's a lot of businesses out there who either got PPP or did not get PPP, but they're hanging by a thread. They've got major costs which have been built up, and as Chad was describing before, they're now looking to provide reconfiguration to their physical spaces or deep cleaning so that they can reopen. So there's a lot of new expenses they have on the plate. So I would hope that they could, that the federal government can move this within a relatively short period of time, given that it's building on decades of formula-driven programs. This one, though, has a very specific purpose to it.
Super helpful. And Chad, maybe last question, and maybe you could wrap in your closing thoughts with this.
Mm-hmm.
Folks are sort of interested, for folks who are sort of how they know the bill is bipartisan, which is great. How is the sort of co-sponsor process going? And for folks who are they're writing, have small business champions in their delegations, how should they be thinking about being helpful? Do we need more co-sponsors at this moment? What's sort of the strategic play on that end?
Yeah, great question. So I think, we have bipartisan, we have co-sponsors on both sides of the aisle. In Montana, Senator Daines; Indiana, Senator Young; and then Senator Booker on the Dem side, along with Senator Murray from Washington. I think this is a moment where co-sponsors is always helpful. It helps show momentum to leadership, that this is something that folks are energized about and rallying around. So I think that's a really helpful signal of momentum. At the same time, I think leadership is specifically Senator McConnell and Senator Schumer is they'll be making the final decisions on these negotiations on the Senate side, and they're certainly going to have a lot of power as well. And just kind of in closing, Red, I just so appreciate this opportunity to talk to you all today. I appreciate all the organizers for making this happen. I am always available if you all have questions. Hopefully there's an opportunity, Red, for, in follow-up, you can send around my email address. This is, in case folks have specific questions about the legislation or and how it would work. But the bottom line is, this is, Senator Booker's top priority in this package, across a whole host of things going on, obviously, in public health and our economy. And so he's giving it everything he's got. And again, we just so appreciate the audience today.
Thanks so much, Chad. And Bruce, can we turn to you for any closing thoughts you have and maybe a call to action for folks who are with us?
I think what we're experiencing is a small business-led recession, or even worse, of a downturn here. And I think what we've understood and witnessed through the first round of SBA response, Paycheck Protection Program, but also the economic injury disaster loans, is that distribution channel through conventional financial institutions and even smaller community banks and CDFIs is not guaranteed to reach very small businesses, and particularly Black and Brown-owned businesses that do not have those kinds of relationships baked in with conventional banks and so forth. So we've already had an experiment the last 3 months. We've learned what works and doesn't work. And this $50 billion Relief for Main Street Act is absolutely necessary to ensure that some of the most vulnerable small businesses can survive these crises and then thrive in the long term. And I am deeply worried, frankly, that we're going to wake up post-crisis, come out of our basement, so to speak, and find many of our main streets, business districts, commercial corridors really bereft of the kind of vibrant, vital, locally owned, authentic small businesses that they had pre-crisis. So this is an important, essential piece of legislation, and I'm hoping that it gets the kind of broad-based support from multiple constituencies to move it forward.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Chad. I want to thank all of our co-sponsors again, especially the various chambers of commerce and business associations put it out. We're going to take Chad up on his offer. So folks who want to get connected, please feel free to email us. We put the email here. But most importantly, I just want to make a call to all the small business owners and small business leaders. I think small businesses have always been influential, but more now than ever, you are such a trusted source, not only in your local communities for sharing information, but also with your legislators at a federal, state, and local level. And if what you heard today makes sense to you, and if you want to continue to really support the small business community, we really encourage you to get in touch with your legislators. We're happy to work with you. If you want to write an op-ed or LTE, our team can help you, support you, help you get it placed, walk you through the process. If you want to do more media work, we're happy to train you and get you in touch with the media around issues like the Relief for Main Street Act. If you don't know how to just get in touch with your senator or congressperson, that's something we can help you with too. So our commitment today is that we will be following up with an email to everyone who attended. We will get you the information on the legislation. We will get you something where you can get in touch with your member of Congress. And together we'll continue to push forward and really try to make sure that we are preserving the vitality of America's main streets. Thank you all so much for your time today. We really appreciate everyone hopping on. With that, this is now the end of the webinar.